Welcome back. Donald Trump is panicking, and the situation unfolding between Ukraine and Russia is really becoming impossible to ignore. So, over the last 24 hours, Ukraine has launched some of the deepest strikes we've seen into Russian territory since this war began. Ukrainian long range drones and missile systems reportedly targeted critical infrastructure throughout the Moscow region, including fuel facilities, industrial sites, and military infrastructure that Russia once claimed were among some of the most heavily protected areas in the country. And now, for the first time, we are seeing repeated reports and footage emerging from Moscow itself showing fires, smoke, explosions, and chaos really just spreading across the Russian capital. Remember, at one point, Donald Trump publicly told Zelensky he didn't have the cards. Zelensky pushed back at a time when essentially he was being warned and letting everybody know that war eventually reaches everyone, even those who believe they are insulated from it. And now Ukraine appears to be demonstrating that it can penetrate directly into the heart of Russia. So, Ukraine's security service confirmed that it conducted a joint operation with Ukraine's armed forces, targeting military industrial infrastructure and fuel infrastructure in the Moscow region. Reports indicated that facilities connected to oil refining, electronics manufacturing, and military logistics were among the targets. What makes this significantly worth looking at is that many of these areas were previously presented by the Kremlin as untouchable, protected by some of the most advanced air defense systems in Russia. But according to multiple reports, Ukrainian drones were able to evade or even overwhelm portions of these defenses and strike targets across the region. Russian social media has since been flooded with videos and images of fires burning throughout Moscow and nearby districts, despite recent Russian laws making it illegal to publicly share footage of attacks and military damage inside the country. And one of the most embarrassing developments for the Kremlin may actually be Russia's own air defense response. There are now several reports that some civilian damage in Moscow may have been caused not by Ukrainian strikes directly, but by Russian or defense systems malfunctioning or debris from interceptions falling into residential areas. And at least several deaths have already been reported in the Moscow region following attacks. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky is openly framing these operations as justified responses to Russia's continued attacks on Ukrainian cities and civilians. Zelensky said that if Russia continues prolonging the war, Ukraine will continue expanding its long range strike capabilities and bringing the consequences of war deeper into Russian territory. He also emphasized that Ukrainian drone and missile manufacturers are continuing to scale production and improve precision capabilities. What's becoming increasingly clear is that this war is entering a new phase. For years, the Kremlin projected the image that Moscow itself was untouchable, but now Ukraine is really demonstrating an ability to strike critical infrastructure hundreds of kilometers inside Russian territory, including areas surrounded by the Russian capital itself. And politically, this creates a real problem for Putin because once ordinary Russians begin seeing fires and explosions and damaged infrastructure inside Moscow itself, the reality of war becomes much harder for the Russian government to contain or distract from the public. At the same time, Russian state media figures and officials are once again escalating nuclear rhetoric and issuing threats against the West and against Ukraine. something we've repeatedly seen whenever Russia faces battlefield embarrassment or strategic setbacks. But regardless of the rhetoric, what we are witnessing right now is a major shift in the perception of this war. Ukraine is no longer fighting only defensively inside its own territory. It's now showing the capability to project force directly into the Russian capital and challenge the image of Russian military and its vulnerability. Slava Ukraini. Until next time.